after 400 years of African struggle, we brought our bones back home so that they could reunite with the soil and finally they could connect.
Hello everyone, today we are at the Slave River in Assin, Ghana, where the slaves had their last bath, where our ancestors had their last bath and were sold, branded, renamed and taken to the slave dungeon. We from the diaspora will take our first bath of return, the healing bath. The sound in the background is natural. Our narrator, the tour guide, tells the story.
We don't have to talk about it. They will come out with their findings and then they will tell our stories. So that's why we normally move here. For Africans coming from the diaspora like yourself, when they come back, it's a way of reconnecting with their land because they haven't felt it yet. Their ancestors touched feet on this land and left, but they were born out there. The children, descendants of these ancestors were born out there. You were born out there. So when you come back, the way of connecting with the land is to put your feet on the ground. So we're gonna walk this way, like this, to the river. Yeah, I want you to reflect on your life that was handed to you by your ancestors.
We are taking this journey today to reflect on the transatlantic trade slave that took place over 400 years ago. The transatlantic slave trade was the largest long-distance forced movement of people in recorded history. From the 16th to the late 19th centuries, over 12 million African men, women, and children were enslaved, transported to the Americas, and bought and sold by Europeans and Euro-American slaveholders as chattel property used for their labor and skills. As we went through this journey, just as the tour guide advised, we meditated. Some of us cried. It was just so touching. In spite of us walking casually through the path, heading to the river, it was an emotional moment for us. During our journey here today, I will let you listen to the natural sounds in the background. It is believed that it is our ancestors speaking to us in their own natural sounds in the background. The rest of the story is told by the tour guide. Listen carefully and understand what our ancestors went through.
Right, so we've managed to get to the ancestral riverside, where our ancestors actually had their last ever bath. It's down here. But before they arrived here, they had to walk for over 400 miles. From different towns to different towns, from communities to communities. They weren't only captured from one place. They got them from several destinations, so they had to move them all down to the southern part of Ghana, where we have the dungeon. For about 400 miles, our ancestors have been walking, almost naked, barefoot, receiving whips in the chains and shackles. They drove them from there to get to this place. As they were bringing them, they took them to the Mule National Park. Today we get to say a national park, but back then in the days it was a place full of wild animals. For our ancestors to walk freely through that park, the captors who had them in the chains and shackles were using some of them as baits. And look at them. Those who showed signs of weakness were taken out of the chains and shackles, walked for several meters and tied to trees. Their backs were whipped. The blood that oozed out of them got the animals attracted. And as the animals were busy feeding on them, they were able to move the rest out of the park. They succeeded, but several lives were lost there. They had to cross a river called the Pra River. Crossing that river became a huge obstacle. That's because most of our ancestors were not only picked from Ghana. They picked some of them from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. All those people were not exposed to this kind of river. So crossing it became a huge obstacle. Brothers who have to help their brothers and sisters out by carrying them at their backs. With the metals on them, it got them drowned. Those who drowned there were buried just at the bank of the river. They then proceeded to get to this place. When they got here, they were totally exhausted, hungry, and very dirty. It was here that they saw the need for them to be fed, but they weren't fed here because they were hungry. You look at our ancestors, they have grown lean. So these captors will have to fatten them up to fit the purpose of the buyers. The buyers who come here with their money. Come closer to them. Before they even arrive here, they will set our ancestors down to the river. And take them down there. We have two different rivers that flow through this particular side. There is another river coming from this particular side at the upper river called the Oche River. Meaning the river that could grab and drown you. The way it flows tells it all. Our ancestors were taken to this part because it looks very calm. It has its source from this same community. We call it Nnonko Naipaul or the Slave River. This was where they took our ancestors to for their last ever bath. In the river, they still had the chains on. They couldn't use their hands to clean themselves. They added a ball, the round metal ball, to the chains around their ankles to hold them still, to prevent them from escaping or swimming across. While there, the captors will have to use the itchy bamboo leaves to scrub them. Doing so got them bruised. And after bruising them, they pulled them all out here, lined them up, allowed them to get dried. Once they were dried, they applied shea butter or palm oil on them for them to look more shiny and presentable for the buyers to come here to pick. The buyers already coming from the dungeons had their branding tools, a long-handled tool forged with their initials or their logos. They put it in the fire. Once it's heated, they pull it out and burn your skin with it, leaving the mark there, showing that you belong to me now. After that, they moved them to the dungeons and renamed them. After the renaming, they baptized them. Meaning they have taken them away from what they knew to be their belief system or their religion, the African spirituality. They pulled them out of it and baptized them into slavery. They moved them out of this place through the Atlantic Ocean to the unknown world. Those who were left in the chains were considered useless commodities. They never saw the next daylight. It was right here that they were shot, singly. Every task of them, every particular person in that chain who couldn't attract buyers were killed right here. Their bodies were dumped all around. The place is full of unmarked graveyards. That's because they never buried them. They only dumped them into the pit and moved to go raise more people to come and sell. Preferably, people call the place the bamboo slave dumping site. Because it was a dumping site, not a slave cemetery. They never buried them, they only dumped them. I prefer that as well. Looking at this, we have the last bar and it's painted in black. This is the color of mourning, color of pain, color of darkness. As at the time our ancestors were in chains and shackles, when you want to tell the African history, you realize that those eras, in that particular era, marked the darkest time in our history. I tell people Africa wasn't built in the 14th century. It started long ago. You look at the Pyramid of Giza, you go to Sudan, you go to Ethiopia, all these beautiful culture. You can start from there. But when you get to the transatlantic slave trade, that may mark the darkest time in our history, and we shouldn't forget about it. So this is a reminder to all brothers and sisters out there in the diaspora. Then in 2019, we built this particular portion of it. First bath of return. For diaspora families, when you come back home to the motherland, where you belong, we take you down there, you take your footwear off, you put it aside, you wash your hands, you wash your feet, clean yourself up. We call it the sign copper healing bath. You are now back to your roots. So getting yourself there and washing yourself, praying to the spirit of the waters, praying to the spirit of your ancestors. We believe that you have become part of us now. You are now back home, connected and spiritually fortified by your spirit and the spirit of your ancestors to go out there. They brought you here for a purpose. And we believe the river is the right channel for you to get your purpose. So then that is where you take it.
We are taking our first bath as a sign that we have returned to the motherland and a sign of acceptance by our ancestors. We are the displaced from the diaspora. We are here today where our ancestors took their last bath. We are taking our first bath on this side of the river. As you can see, there was a pre-meditation. We had a 5-minute meditation before we got to this point. And now we're stepping in one by one to take our first bath in the river that our ancestors crossed during the Atlantic slave trade. Today we are here taking our first bath as we are welcomed here in Ghana. We are now baptized and considered accepted back to the motherland.
These walls are things written by our brothers and sisters who have returned back. Mostly names of individuals. We wanted to put it on the wall so that it represented the families. At this ancestral graveyard, we have bones of Madam Crystal from Kingston, Jamaica. And then we have Samuel Carson from New York City, United States. Crystal was a captive from Ghana all the way to Jamaica. She got there and she wouldn't eat anything. She embarked on a hunger strike. A dying wish was to be brought to this land. So in 1998, they brought the bones back to be buried here. As part of emancipation on 1st of August, they brought the two of them. Had them buried. Samuel Carson had to serve in the U.S. Navy. He died and wasn't given a befitting burial, so they brought his bones back. They were brought here 31st of July and finally they were buried. Then we have the bones of our ancestors brought back from Barbados by the Prime Minister of Barbados, Excellency Mia Amamoto. We buried here 11th of November 2019 after 400 years of African struggle. We brought our bones back home so that they could reunite with the soil and finally they could connect.